The President of the United States warned tonight that a whole civilization will die if a deal with Iran is not reached before his deadline. A United States fighter jet has been shot down inside Iranian territory. Oil prices have surged above $117 per barrel. At the same time, 4 human beings are completing a historic orbit of the moon, the closest any person has come to the lunar surface in more than 50 years. A celebrated war hero has been charged with murdering 5 unarmed Afghan civilians. A government has barred one of the world's most famous musicians from entering its borders. And an American soldier protecting this country is fighting his own government to keep his wife from being deported. All of this unfolded within the last 24 hours. Before this video ends, every one of these stories gets worse. Stay with us. Good evening. Tonight's broadcast covers 5 developing crises spanning 3 continents and beyond Earth's atmosphere. In the Middle East, the United States and Iran are at the most dangerous inflection point in decades, with officials confirming U.S. airstrikes against Iranian oil infrastructure. In deep space, NASA's Artemis II crew has returned historic images from the far side of the moon. In Australia, a decorated soldier faces justice for alleged murders on foreign soil. In the United Kingdom, a government ban on a global artist has triggered the cancellation of one of London's premier music festivals. And inside the United States, the line between military service and immigration enforcement has collided with devastating consequences for one army family. Let's begin. This is the story that has every government in the world on alert tonight. President Donald Trump issued what sources familiar with the situation describe as the most explicit military ultimatum of his presidency, warning publicly that, in his words, a whole civilization will die tonight if Iran does not comply with his demand to reopen the Strait of Hormuz before his 8 o'clock Eastern deadline. Officials confirmed that United States forces have already struck Iran's Kharg Island, the country's primary oil export terminal, situated at the northern tip of the Persian Gulf. The strike, sources say, was deliberate and targeted, designed to signal intent rather than deliver a final blow. But make no mistake, analysts warn, the line between signal and war has never been thinner. The crisis escalated from a previous incident in which a U.S. Navy fighter jet was shot down inside Iranian airspace. According to officials familiar with the situation, the aircraft was downed by a shoulder-fired surface-to-air missile, and the crew was recovered in a high-risk rescue operation that President Trump described as relying on dozens of aircraft and significant strategic subterfuge. Oil markets responded immediately. Crude prices soared above $117 per barrel, their highest level in over a decade. Sources in the energy sector confirm that should the Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly 20% of the world's oil supply passes, be blocked or remain closed, the global economy would face a supply shock of historic proportions. Experts consulting with international law institutions have warned that Trump's threatened destruction of Iran's civilian power plants could, if carried out, constitute a war crime under the Geneva Conventions. The White House has not formally responded to those assessments. Iran, for its part, has not signaled capitulation. Officials close to the negotiations report little meaningful progress. Asian nations including India, China, Japan, and South Korea have confirmed separate energy agreements with Tehran, complicating Washington's pressure campaign. India's currency and financial markets took a significant hit, with sources in Mumbai describing an unprecedented triple energy shock. The next hours, officials confirm, will determine whether diplomacy survives or whether this conflict crosses into a full-scale confrontation the world has not seen since the Gulf War. In the most profound counterpoint to the chaos below, 4 human beings are completing something extraordinary tonight. NASA's Artemis II crew has successfully executed a free return trajectory around the moon, becoming the first humans to reach lunar proximity since the Apollo 17 mission in 1972. Officials at NASA's Johnson Space Center confirmed that the mission has gone, in their words, near flawless to date. The crew captured and transmitted the first close-up photographs of the lunar surface from human hands in over half a century. Among those images is a stunning Earth-set photograph, the planet Earth appearing to set behind the moon's cratered horizon, an image that has already been compared by sources in the space community to the iconic Earthrise photograph taken by Apollo 8 in 1968. In a moment that sources described as deeply emotional, The crew named a previously unnamed lunar crater after the mission commander's late wife, a tribute confirmed during a live communication session with Earth. The mission did experience a 40-minute communication blackout as the spacecraft passed behind the moon, losing all contact with ground control. Officials confirmed this was an expected and planned occurrence, consistent with lunar orbital physics. President Trump spoke directly with the Artemis II crew following their lunar flyby, officials confirmed. The crew is now on a return trajectory toward Earth. Sources within NASA are clear about what this mission represents. Artemis II is not a destination, it is a rehearsal. Within the next 2 years, if this program proceeds as planned, human beings will walk on the moon for the first time since Richard Nixon was in office. The question now, sources say, is whether political will and budget discipline will hold long enough to make it happen. He was Australia's most decorated living soldier. Tonight, he is a defendant in one of the most consequential war crimes cases in that nation's history. Ben Robert Smith, a recipient of the Victoria Cross, Australia's highest military honor, has been formally charged by prosecutors with committing 5 murders during combat operations in Afghanistan. Officials confirmed the charges on Tuesday, following a landmark defamation case 3 years ago, in which courts found that news organizations had not defamed the decorated soldier by alleging he had committed unlawful killings. Robert Smith, for his part, has denied all wrongdoing. Sources familiar with the prosecution's case say the charges relate to incidents in which unarmed Afghan civilians were allegedly shot and killed by Robert Smith or at his direction during military operations. The allegations, if proven, would represent one of the most serious war crime convictions by any Western nation of a decorated military figure. This case is part of a broader reckoning. Australia's Inspector General of the Australian Defence Force previously produced a landmark report finding credible evidence that Australian Special Forces soldiers unlawfully killed 39 Afghan civilians over a 14-year period. Officials acknowledged at the time that a profound failure of command culture had allowed the alleged conduct to occur. International observers, including sources at the International Criminal Court, have noted that the prosecution of a Victoria Cross recipient would send a signal that military honors do not confer immunity from accountability. Legal experts caution, however, that the burden of proof in such cases remains extraordinarily high, and the proceedings are expected to be protracted. Robert Smith is expected to face a preliminary hearing in coming weeks. He continues to deny every allegation. What began as a concert booking has become an international incident. The United Kingdom government has barred rapper and fashion mogul Kanye West, who performs under the name Ye, from entering the country. Officials confirmed the decision was made under powers that allow the government to exclude individuals whose presence is deemed not conducive to the public good. The specific basis cited by sources familiar with the decision relates to a sustained pattern of anti-Semitic statements and the public expressed support for figures associated with Nazi ideology. The consequences were immediate. The Wireless Festival, one of London's most prominent summer music events, and the festival at which West had been confirmed to headline, was cancelled outright. Festival organizers cited the government's entry ban as the direct cause, saying the event could not proceed without its headliner. The cancellation sent shockwaves through the UK music industry. Major corporate sponsors, sources confirm, had already begun withdrawing from the festival before the official cancellation announcement, citing reputational exposure. West's response, according to sources close to his team, has been to offer to meet with representatives of the Jewish community in Britain as a condition of reconsidering his stance. That offer, sources indicate, has been received with profound skepticism. Legal analysts note that the UK's exclusion power is broad and rarely challenged successfully. West would face significant legal obstacles to reversing the ban. This story sits at the intersection of free speech, public safety, and cultural accountability. It raises a question that governments around the world are now actively debating. At what point does a global entertainer's platform cross the line from protected expression into measurable public harm? Of all the stories we have reported tonight, this one may be the most quietly devastating. An active-duty United States Army Staff Sergeant is in a legal battle to prevent his wife from being deported after she was detained by immigration enforcement agents on a U.S. military installation in Louisiana. Sources familiar with the case confirmed that the soldier's wife, a foreign national who had resided legally in the United States for several years under a protected immigration status, was taken into custody by ICE agents who entered the military base with proper authorization. The soldier, whose name officials have not released pending legal proceedings, is described by sources as a decorated non-commissioned officer who has served multiple overseas deployments. He is currently stationed domestically and was not present when his wife was detained. Legal advocates working on the family's behalf argue that detaining the spouse of an active-duty service member carries an elevated obligation of due process. A federal judge has temporarily stayed the deportation order, preventing her removal while legal proceedings continue. Officials confirmed the matter is now before federal immigration court. This case has drawn attention at the highest levels of the United States military, with sources describing quiet concern within the Army chain of command about the precedent being set. ICE officials, for their part, have confirmed the detention was conducted lawfully and in accordance with standing executive orders. The soldier's attorney told reporters that his client signed an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States, and he is asking whether that Constitution defends him in return. Pull back from the details. Look at this day as a single frame. In the same 24 hours, the most powerful democracy on Earth threatened to destroy a nation's civilian infrastructure. The species that created nuclear weapons sent 4 of its members to orbit the moon. A man decorated for battlefield courage faces trial for battlefield murder. A global icon was barred from an entire country for the words he chose to speak. And a soldier who swore to protect America is fighting to protect his family from America. These are not isolated events. They are symptoms of a world under simultaneous and multiplying pressure. Stay informed, stay engaged, because the decisions made in the next 72 hours will shape the world your children inherit. That is our broadcast for April the 7th, 2026. Please subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and drop your thoughts in the comments. The world is not slowing down, neither are we. Stay with us.